Welcome to this session of the DoD Modernization Exchange. My guest today is Ringo, a senior solutions architect at Akamai Technologies. Stephen, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Thank you for having me.
One of the big things we are seeing across the federal government and specifically inside DoD is really this use of APIs, application programming interfaces. A funny story, my daughter, who's a software engineer, said, "You don't even know what APIs are." And I told her exactly what they were. And then she walked out of the room. But we're seeing this really excitement around APIs because it's connecting data, connecting systems in a much easier way. But now we have to worry about shadow APIs like we used to worry about or still do worry about shadow IT. Let's start with what are shadow APIs, and then we can kind of talk about how agencies can start to really focus on bringing those together and controlling them a little better.
Yeah, well, thanks, Jason. Yeah, and that's good. I started life out as a software engineer as well, so been working with APIs for a very long time. They are definitely not new. And this concept of shadow APIs or rogue APIs, it can be somewhat elusive to understand, right? But really, all it is APIs that are in your environment that you don't necessarily know that are there, right? So a lot of their federal customer base will buy and use COTS software, so commercial off-the-shelf software. And that software typically does inform you of all of the major APIs that it uses. But as with everything, right, we no longer, in the modern application architecture environment, we no longer make these giant monolithic applications. So many of these applications you're buying off the shelf incorporate other bits and pieces of information. Some of them can even be open source applications. And we all kind of make use of this. So there's APIs in that perhaps even your developer didn't know was running around, right? So shadow rogue APIs, in short, are just APIs that exist in your environment. They're doing something. You don't know what they are. You don't even know that they exist. So how do you wrap your head around that, right? How do you gather that information and discover these rogue or shadow APIs that you are not controlling for already in your environment? It's a funny story. The API security journey I say it as a journey because it really is. It's something that you have to take step by step. And certainly that first piece of it is API discovery. So it's not just this idea of I'm going to go out and I'm going to find everything that I already know exists, or I'm going to build this registry I know exists already. It's how do we get to that information that you don't know is there so that you can protect it, right? Because you can't protect what you don't know about.
I think one thing we're seeing about that is as the threats become greater, there's bigger threats that are coming in through APIs. You hear a lot of people as the APIs adding to an attack service, making it larger. Is that part of the rationale for this need for discovery? Because if you don't know it's there, you don't know how it's being used, it could be an avenue for an attack as well.
Absolutely. So that's why this is starting to gain a lot of traction, right? The API is a increased threat vector because as more and more applications come on board, right, we get this exponential increase in the number of APIs that exist across the board, right? And the problem is, and the reason why it's such a issue from a threat vector standpoint is often APIs, because of their design as application programming interfaces, they were designed to allow applications to solicit services and data from other applications. They weren't necessarily designed for human to application interaction, right? So oftentimes the APIs that you have running around your environment have direct access to not just your services, but the databases on the back end. So direct access to your data. And if I'm a hacker, what's easiest, right? Am I going to go through the process of doing a man-in-the-middle attack on the network and intercepting encrypted traffic that is, by the way, highly sophisticated now, and could take me literal weeks, months, or years to break that encryption? Or am I going to misuse one of your APIs and get direct access to your database to cause that data breach I'm after in the first place, right? So this is why we say that APIs are becoming such a big attack vector. And back in 2021, I think it was Gartner, in fact, that released a report that stated that by 2023, APIs very well could be the #1 threat vector out there. And I think with what we've seen, is particularly in the media as of late, as it relates to perhaps the U.S. Treasury Department, we would be very hard pressed to argue against that fact that APIs do. They definitely are a high visibility attack vector, they may be the number one attack vector.
And because of their growth and because of how much they're used, that's why this idea of role-based, attribute-based control, identity and access management becomes even more important because now it's not just, well, I have access, but hey, does Stephen Ringo have access to this database that he's trying to pull data from? Talk about the integration of ICAM APIs and how this all fits together.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the next big piece, right? So once you grab your hand around what's there, how do we protect it, right? And you want to be granular here. So integrating ICAM into this, particularly in the federal space, DoD space, in fact, tactical ICAM especially, right? So you want to be able to bring this identity management into your well, holistically, your cybersecurity envelope, right? Which should include API security as well. But then integrating that into your API security platform allows you to bring extra granularity. So it's not just role based, it's attribute based, right? So it's not just does Stephen Ringo have access to call this API that's accessing data from this database? It's does Stephen Ringo's role, right? Do the individual attributes that make up Stephen Ringo, not just he's an employee, right? Or not just that he's a solutions architect, right? But in particular, he's a API security specialist solutions architect that should have access to the APIs accessing the databases that make up that particular platform, but not necessarily the rest of the larger, in this particular case, Akamai platform, right? So it's bringing that extra granularity to it. So here, well, at least with our API security platform, we do integrate with not just our ICAM, but other ICAMs as well, but particularly from the federal government space, DoD, our tactical ICAM capability to bring that extra granularity to your API security posture.
Can you talk a little bit about how that actually works? Is the identity and access management piece integrated specifically with the ICAM or it rides on top?
Mhm.
And is this another, oh no, another level of integration? Here I go again, bolting on my security. Talk a little bit about the challenge there.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So it's important to understand that when you're looking at cybersecurity as a whole, and in particular API security, you want to be able to have these levels of integration that exist holistically within your environment, right? ICAM is one of them. And a lot of people think, oh, ICAM is just SSO, but it's not just SSO, right? It's a layer above single sign-on capability, right? That allows you to be very granular in the way that you apply your cybersecurity postures. Or in this particular case, we're talking about the API security platform. So it is an integration piece, but it is an integration piece that's built in seamlessly to the API security platform because ICAM exists as a fundamental offering that we have, right? So if you are using something like the Akamai WAF and CDN, right, you're already going to have this ICAM capability. And in particular, within the DoD, it is a tactical capability that exists at the service edge, right? So you have this ability to bring this identity awareness and management to your entire cybersecurity posturing system, of which the API security platform is one of them.
And of course, we talk ICAM, we got to talk zero trust and the role of
Yeah.
zero trust because that's really all about this who you are, do you have access, and always verifying you. And that to do that and do it in real time to really understand kind of like with all these APIs, all these databases floating around, Stephen, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the role of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the roles they play in helping agencies kind of make those decisions at near or real time.
Yeah, absolutely. So AI, and when most people think of AI today, they think of something like a chat GPT, right? An LLM of some kind that helps them with their day-to-day work. But it's important to understand that there's many different types of AI that are out there. And when you look at all of them, regardless of which flavor you go with, we'll pick on an LLM in this particular case. As you're asking questions to an LLM or an AI, the AI, it doesn't have a big database of literally all of human knowledge in it, right? It's making API calls out to these different databases. So think of it like So another solution that might be easier to understand is something like an Uber, right? Whenever you hail Uber, Uber didn't create a whole map system and GPS system, right? They call out and they pull those pieces from Google and everywhere else to create this holistic view. Well, the LLMs do the same thing. To answer your question, they go out and they pull information from everywhere and they consolidate it in. All of that is API calls. And honestly, a lot of it is in the clear, right? Meaning completely and totally unprotected, right? So this is another reason why we see the explosion of APIs in use and the need to protect them. But specifically, the way that we do it, right, is with ML, right? Machine learning. Everybody understands what machine learning algorithms are, right? They're algorithms that are built to allow for your computing environment to learn heuristics and other data that can help you identify anomalies as they exist, right? So it's important to have these AI and ML technologies built into your systems from the get-go so that they can alert you to any misuse, right? And to be honest with you, that's kind of our secret sauce, right? Because everybody is familiar with a firewall or even a web application firewall that can block, let's say, a SQL injection or a malformed packet of some kind or detect man-in-the-middle attacks on the network side. All of those are malformations of information that should not exist. But how do you protect an API that is not being malformed, right? No packets are being malformed when called to an API, but perhaps you have an API that is leaking unnecessary information from your database. So you are inadvertently supplying data in a data breach fashion to a bad actor that is not necessarily malforming anything. They're just misusing or abusing the APIs that you have set forth. The only way to do that is to use machine learning algorithms to detect the normal usage of your APIs and any anomalies thereof, and then alert you to them so you can lock them down.
Stephen, we got about 30 seconds or so left. This has been a great conversation. Let me just ask you to bring it back around. So much going on around security and such. What's the big message you want to make sure our audience is left with?
Big message is API security is a journey, right? Starts with discovery, starts with setting up your posture, then controlling the runtime, and then hopefully preventative actions like testing before products make themselves into production environments, right? I would encourage everybody to reach out to your industry professionals like myself to help you with the start of your API security journey, indeed with your cybersecurity journey as it exists today. That's what we're here for. We're here to help.
All right. And there's so much to do with cybersecurity that I'm sure a lot of folks will be looking for some help. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this session. So let me thank my guest. Stephen Ringo is a senior solutions architect at Akamai Technologies. Stephen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jason, for having me.
I'm Jason Miller, and you're watching Federal News Network. Now let me send you back to the studio for more on the DoD Modernization Exchange.